Howdy, my name is Batakanta and today I will be showing you how you can create your very own combat system using command blocks in Minecraft. I will do this by showing a combat system that I have created, which is super simple but effective. First of all, you will notice that these weapons don't have any attack cooldowns. It's super noticeable on the axe. However, you might be wondering, won't that make the axe extremely overpowered? Well, not exactly. As you can see, we are getting weakness when we hold the axe, making the axe do very little damage. However, you may also be wondering, won't that make axes completely useless? Well, not exactly, and it's all tied to this vigor meter right here, and I will show you how that works now. Without any vigor, axes can only be used for disabling shields and won't do very much attack damage. This is a regular witch with default health that is unable to heal itself. So, how do you fill up the vigor meter? Simple, just attack with your sword instead. As you can see, it's more effective, and now if we use the axe, you will see that there's no longer weakness, and when we use it, it depletes vigor and does full damage. And when the vigor meter completely fills up, the player will get a small amount of speed boost. So this super simple, easy to understand combat system gives players two major playstyles. The first one is just classic 1.8 spam clicking with a sword, and players will get a speed boost whenever the vigor meter fills up. However, they will be sacrificing their DPS, because the other playstyle is to switch between the sword and the axe for maximized DPS. Now I will show you how it works. All commands you can find in the description, so you can copy paste them into your modules. Just make sure the command blocks are set properly. NoAI Witch is a very simple command block. You can see it right here. It just summons a witch a little bit above the command block, so it stands on top of it. Make sure it's silent, make sure it has no AI, and make sure it doesn't drop anything except if it holds out a potion, in which case I am defenseless. For weapons are a little bit more complicated, so I will just display it in chat. So it gives the player the iron sword and it messes with the attributes. First attribute is the generic attack speed, which it sets to 0, so it makes it so there is no attack cooldown. And the other attribute is the attack damage, which you need to set, otherwise your swords will deal only 1 damage per hit. And right here the sword is set to 6, and the same thing is applied for the axe, except instead of iron sword it's iron axe, and instead of 6 here it's 9. Attributes are also set to only work in the main hand. This isn't really necessary, but it's just so the item info isn't spammed, and it's very neatly organized like this. Now let's take a look at how the actual module for the vigor bar works. The command just creates a scoreboard called vigor. You can make it so it's any color you want, and you can name it whatever. Here's the command. It sets a scoreboard type for using an iron sword. So this way it detects when player hits with an iron sword. And this command block creates a boss bar that we can see here. This ID can be any number you want. I just put it 1 because just cause. And here you can customize how you want it to look. And over here we can customize it even further, which is what I did. So first of all, it sets the color to green. Second of all, it makes it so it has 6 notches. So it basically has 6 little sections here. Here it sets the maximum amount for the boss bar, which is 6. You don't have to match it with the number of notches. I just did it that way because I think it's simple that way. And right here it sets it so that it's visible, and it sets it to apply to all players. Here we have a scoreboard which detects when the player is using an axe. It's the same thing as the scoreboard for the iron sword, except it's called an axe because I called it that way. You can call it whatever you like, and it's testing when player is using an iron axe. You also don't have to format this at all, because this scoreboard isn't going to be visible to players. Now let's take a look at how the actual module for the vigor bar works. It is a simple command that gives the player weakness if they are holding an axe but don't have any vigor. Let's go through it bit by bit. So it runs a basic effect give command to the nearest player, and then it checks for scores. It checks for vigor that is 0 or below. And then it also sets the NPT tag of the player to make sure the selected item, aka the item that the player is currently holding out, is an iron axe. Small note, you have to put Minecraft right here, otherwise this will not detect. And then it just gives the player the weakness effect for 1 second and the amplifier of 1, which results in weakness 2, and it hides the particles. This command determines how the player gains vigor. It's actually very simple. Let me show you. So this is the execute command, execute store command to be more precise. So what the store function of the execute command does is it will store the result of the following command into a boss bar, and that boss bar is the boss bar with the ID value of 1, which is this vigor boss bar right here. And it will store the value, not the maximum. So which command is it checking? It's of course checking the scoreboard. So this get command will check the amount of score the player has. It checks for the nearest player and for the score vigor. So basically what this will do, simply put, is it will equal the boss bar amount with the amount of score the player has in vigor. These two commands determine how the player uses vigor. Right now I have made it so that the vigor is used up when player uses an axe. So let's see how that works. It's pretty simple. This execute command checks if the nearest player has the score of axe to be 1 or above, meaning the player has used an axe, but also that the vigor score is greater than 1, so that the player has vigor. And then it will just remove 1 point from the scoreboard vigor. And this command right here will activate, and it will remove the score of the axe so that it's set back to 0. And of course it checks if the score of axe is 1 first, because otherwise it will just lower it in the negatives. And these commands determine what will happen when the vigor bar is fully filled up. Right now I have it set that it gives players a little bit of speed boost. So let's see how that works. This one is a simple command like before. It checks if the vigor score is 6 or above, so basically the full boss bar, and then it will give the player speed for 5 seconds with the amplifier of 1, which results in speed 2, and it will hide the particles. Then it sets the vigor score of the player back to 0. This is my mistake right here. I put my name instead of @p, but really if you're doing this in a single player world, you can just put your own name. And lastly, this is just a tell row command that executes once these two executed successfully, which is going to tell the player that they got the rush by saying you feel invigorated in green, because I like green. Small note that this system isn't very well optimized for multiplayer. This is because I tried to make this tutorial as simple as possible and mostly as a proof of concept. If you want to use it in multiplayer, you will have to optimize it a bit more first. I just made it this way so that it's as simple as it gets. With that said, I hope you enjoyed the tutorial and that you were able to follow through. This tutorial was made for Minecraft Java Edition 1.16.5, so I'm not sure if it will work in other versions, but you can try it out, and you can also try on console ports as well if you're curious about that. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.